If you had money, what watches would you buy? That's the very unimportant question I'll be answering for myself today. Look, one of the things we often say around Worn and Wound is that you don't have to be able to buy a watch to appreciate it. The very high-end watches are, or at least should be, about the craft and creativity that goes into them, from the métier d'art to the technical innovations of unique movements and complications, to the finishing of components, so on and so forth. But they also are for sale, for better or worse, for someone somewhere to buy. I mean, the watchmakers certainly deserve to make a living, and then some, just like any other artist, so an exchange makes sense. And to that end, it's fun on occasion to think, what watches would I actually buy if I had money? You know, not just enough for one said watch, but a whole collection. Being who I am, though, I had to think about it with a modicum of practicality. So the 5 watches I've chosen are also quite distinct from one another, each fitting in its own category for a well-rounded collection. Why? Well, I've noticed over the years that people with money often have bad taste, so should any of them be watching, perhaps this can help steer them in the right direction. As for the rest of us, well, there's always the motto. So without further ado, let's get this thing started. Number 1, time only. An interesting paradox in the world of watchmaking is that time-only watches can be both the least and most expensive watches in a collection. On one side, their simplicity contributes to a reduced cost, less parts, less finishing, less dial-side adornment. And on the other, they're a platform to showcase technique, design, refinement, and ironically, sometimes a complexity of a different nature in the form of unique escapements and systems that focus on high accuracy. So the first watch I'd pick up would be the Berneron Mirage 38mm. What might seem like an exercise in whimsical aesthetics is actually a clever design driven first by watchmaking. Although its shape often leads to comparisons with the Cartier Crash, its melted form is a reflection of a movement designed for efficiency. Notably, the caliber 233 features a large barrel, allowing for a 72-hour power reserve despite being relatively small and thin at 2.3mm thick, as well as featuring a fully exposed free-sprung balance held by a large bridge that occupies nearly half of the movement. By following the layout of the components rather than fitting them all in a circle, an irregular or asymmetrical shape was discovered, which then determined the overall shape of the watch. So form follows the form of function. But before moving to that shape and the looks of the Mirage, there's a bit more to the caliber. First of all, the bridges and plates are all made of solid 18-karat gold, because what's a watch without a lot of precious metal? Next, the decoration on this thing is just gorgeous, mixing organic shapes that echo the overall design with various surfacing techniques, including a stunning variation of Côte de Genève that undulates out from a center point. Yes, this watch is time only, but there is a rather cool alteration to the standard display. The hour hand is on top of the minute hand, which is ingenious. This little switcheroo has 2 benefits. First, it allows for the dome of the crystal to follow the staggering of the hands, allowing for a thinner and more elegant profile. Second, the hour hand is now visible as the minutes can't cover it. It's just brilliant. Okay, with the movement geekery out of the way, let's take in the odd beauty of this watch. The fever dream of a case measures 37.5 by 33.5 millimeters, no typical diameter given the shape, and it's 7 millimeters thick. I've handled it before and it just drips with elegance. Though following the shape of the movement, the precise curves of the case are derived from the Fibonacci sequence, so the seeming randomness is not random at all. Whether perceivable or not, I feel like this adds to its organic beauty. While legibility might drop somewhat from the artistic direction, there's a certain je ne sais quoi to haute horology that allows for more poetic telling of the time. There are 2 versions of this outstanding watch, Sienna and Prussian blue, with the former in sensuous yellow gold paired with reddish brown, and the latter in white gold with deep blue for a more understated approach. If I had 65,000 Swiss francs, which is about 80,000 USD, the hardest decision would be which one to choose. Number 2, date and a power reserve. Since this little thought experiment of mine has, nothing to do with reality, the next watch is not just priced high, but exceedingly rare, as there are only 35 of them and they are currently all owned, as far as I know. But hey, what's money good for if not to offer people silly amounts of dough for things that they have that you want, or more ethically, bid as highly as needed at auction? The watch? Well, that's the George Daniels anniversary, designed by the late master watchmaker to mark the 35th anniversary of the creation of his revolutionary coaxial escapement, and finished by his only protege, Roger Smith. Now look, there are so many reasons why I would want to own a George Daniels if money were no object, from the painstaking craft they exhibit to their historical significance. This is like owning an original Breguet, but from the 21st century. But in the context of this guide, it's a combination of those factors and that they're ridiculously gorgeous. While the Berneron was a great example of contemporary watch design, the anniversary is classical through and through. The case is relatively simple and understated, save being solid 18-karat gold. It's 40mm circular with short lugs and has a rounded profile that generally evokes pocket watch cases. It's the dial that is really the showstopper. A feast of hand-turned guilloche, including basket weave, barleycorn, and hobnail patterns. The solid silver surface is accented with yellow gold chapter rings, creating a distinctive layout. Though the crown is at 3, the hour and minutes are offset slightly above the midline of the dial, creating extra space for two massive subdials set at 4 and 7 for the seconds and pointer date, respectively. The movement, handmade and hand-finished, is unsurprisingly a work of art. Decorated in traditional British style with frosted golden plates, other than the coaxial escapement, it could be straight out of the 19th century. While I know this type of classical design isn't for everyone, I always find it amazing how, when well executed, they exhibit a timeless quality. Like, this is the true language of watches, not a result of the technologies and tastes of the time. But regardless, when crafting a collection concept, there's room for at least one watch in this style. As for the price, well, in 2023, one went at Philips for just north of $600,000. Indeed. Number 3, a chronograph. Whether one really needs a chronograph is a debate for another day, but I do think a well-rounded collection should include one just for the variety. Hey, they are useful when cooking and such. When thinking about a chronograph on a level, a few do come to mind, but one ekes out the competition in my book due to its mix of functionality, mechanical complexity, and sheer exotic looks. That watch is the MB&F Legacy Machine Sequential Flyback. Created by legendary movement designer Stephen McDonnell, the sequential chronograph, first launched in 2022, does things that no other chronograph has done before by combining two independent chronograph mechanisms in a single watch, and then implementing a first-of-its-kind linking system called the twinverter. So what the does that mean? Well, basically, 4 of the pushers operate the chronographs on either side as expected. Start, stop at the top, reset at the bottom. The chronos can run one at a time or together. They are fully independent. This is where the twinverter comes in. The button at 9 is sort of a magic switch inverting the functions of the chronos. If you hit it while they're both fully stopped, they will start in sync. You can then pause, restart, and reset them independently. Where it gets really cool is if you push the twinverter while only one chronograph is running. In that situation, the running chrono will stop and the stopped chrono will start. Hit it again and they will reverse. Because of this, you can time two things in relay like a rattrapante that keeps going. It's incredible and bonkers, but the original from 2022 lacked one fairly crucial function that was added in 2024, flyback mechanisms. Now, rather than having to pause and reset before starting either side, one can simply hit the resets and the chronos will continue running with minimal loss of time. Putting functionality aside, the Legacy Machine Sequential Flyback is, like all MB&Fs, a truly wondrous sight. A large watch at 44mm in diameter and 18.2mm in height. A lot of that is the giant domed crystal. The dial is less a dial and more an opening into a world of gears, cams, levers, hands, and other mechanical doodads, all hanging out under the watchful eye of a seemingly detached balance ticking overhead. The LM sequential flyback was launched in a platinum edition of 33 at the price of $218,000, which, if you think about it, is like getting two $106,000 chronographs, so a value indeed. That was a joke. There's also the Longhorn edition celebrating the 20th anniversary of the brand, which has a steel case and is priced at 168,000 Swiss francs, or about 209,000 USD currently. Either way, if you're going to get a chronograph, it might as well be the ultimate chronograph, and this takes the cake. Watch 4, a GMT. Okay, when I say GMT, rarely is anyone tracking Greenwich Mean Time, so what I really mean to say is a dual time watch. A pretty common complication to find in any collection these days, whether for travel, business, or other such temporal needs. A watch that can tell the time in two places at once has its uses. But is just a straightforward dual time watch really level? Well, for the sake of this video, no. So I'm going to go with a watch that combines the relatively simple task of displaying two times with something a touch more esoteric. The Armin Strom Dual Time GMT Resonance, a watch that combines crazy engineering, contemporary aesthetics, top-notch execution, and perhaps most impressively, is still surprisingly wearable. First launched during 2024's Geneva Watch Days, the Dual Time GMT Resonance, not sure whether they both dual time and GMT in the name, essentially combines two movements into one watch, mirroring each other, and then utilizes resonance, as well as a patented contraption I'll get to in a moment, to create one hell of a watch. So let's take a step back. What is resonance? Resonance is when multiple oscillators in close proximity naturally synchronize and regulate each other through vibration. In this case, the oscillators are two balance wheels in a single watch. As they work together in resonance, they negate the effects of things like gravity, shock, positional changes, etc. for highly accurate timekeeping. In watchmaking, it's a phenomenon that dates back to the days of Breguet and his sympathetique clocks. Now, while exceptional high-end watchmaking, this isn't new for the dual-time GMT. In fact, this watch is actually a remake or redux of a concept that Armin Strom had in their catalog for some time, but dramatically reduced in size from, frankly, an unwearable 56 millimeters to a delightful 39 millimeters. So let's talk about the design for a moment. Like the MB&F, which this watch has some interesting commonalities with, the dial space is more of an atrium with smaller dials within, as well as exposed balances, the resonance clutch, dual barrels, and part of the winding system. Clearly, there are time displaying dials on the left and right of the space, which are set independently by crowns off either side of the case, though only the crown on the right side is used for winding. The dials feature applied markers, appealing texturing, and very cool day-night indicators at their respective sixes with moon textures opposed by graphic illustrations of the sun. I've had the chance to try these on a couple of times, and they are pretty perfect, and unlike some of the other watches in this guide, actually easily wearable. There are two versions of the dual-time GMT Resonance, the first and Founders editions. The first edition is in white gold and features blue and black on the time dials. Limited to 25 pieces, it retailed for 115,000 Swiss francs, which is about 145,000 USD. The Founders Edition featured a steel case, all black dials, and was limited to 50 units. That one's priced at 95,000 Swiss francs, or about 120,000 USD. Finally, number 5, a perpetual calendar. Of course, I had to include a perpetual calendar. For me, perpetual calendars are the ultimate mix of decadence and functionality, luxury and practicality. They have notoriously complex movements that are often fickle because of how they are set. I once read they are referred to by watchmakers as boomerangs because they often come back for service. And yet the ability to see the full calendar at a glance, have it change accurately for you throughout the year, and take into account those pesky leap years is just, I don't know, it's like romantic or something. I mean, it's an awful lot for a little mechanical thing to do. Anyway, when one pictures a perpetual calendar in their head, they likely come up with a traditional dial of sorts, with probably 3, maybe 4 crowded subdials on the dial. Don't get me wrong, I love those, and if I ever get a perpetual, it will probably look like that. But this video isn't about everyday watches, it's about really special watches, so to that end, a off perpetual needed to be extra. Which is why I'm going for the Lange & Söhne Richard Lange Perpetual Calendar Terra Luna, a watch that deserves such a long name. Okay, where do you even begin with this absolutely insane creation? Well, for one thing, it's a regulator. I'm a big fan of regulators. I own several. When I see a new one come out, I am immediately tempted by it. There's just something about a watch with time told on 3 separate axes that gets me going. But one thing that is very uncommon to find is a regulator with additional complications. And unless I'm mistaken, this is the only perpetual calendar regulator out there. Now, I'm sort of bearing the lead with this watch, but let's stick with the dial for a second. Regulators typically have hours on a subdial at the top, seconds on the bottom, and minutes told at the center of the dial, which is to say a standard minute hand. That's not how Lange does it. Rather, there are 3 circles with the minutes above the center point, hours around 4.5, and seconds around 7.5. The minute circle is the largest, while the hour and seconds are smaller and equally sized, and all 3 overlap like a big Venn diagram. Though the layout makes it a bit busier than most regulators, it's also unique and pleasingly instrument-like. Further, it creates an interesting opportunity for window placement for the calendar functions. So there are no subdials, rather there are fairly discrete windows, as well as Lange's signature grand date positioned at 12. The day is around 8 mark, and the month is around 4. Looking at the back, well, there's something pretty uncommon afoot, which is where the Terra Luna portion of the name comes into play. Yes, 3/4 of the movement are hidden behind a depiction of the Earth surrounded by a star-filled sky complete with a little moon. This isn't just a piece of art, it's one of the coolest moon phases you'll ever see. Lange makes reading it easy as the moon phase is displayed in the little moon aperture in the same way we often see it on the dial, but there's also a lot more going on. You see, the Earth rotates once every 24 hours, and the whole sky rotates with the moon orbiting within it as per the lunar cycle of 29.5-ish days. But the key to it all is the balance wheel, which doubles as the sun relative to the position of the Earth and the moon in the display. Okay, so with that in mind, you know the position of the moon relative to the sun, which actually can tell you the moon phase without the convenient display. If the moon is between the Earth and the sun, it's a new moon. If it's on the side of the Earth opposite the sun, it's full, and then you have waxing and waning in between. But there's more. The Earth shows the northern hemisphere, so day and night can be determined for the world as half will be toward the sun and the other half toward the void of space. Furthermore, you can extend the longitude lines out from the Earth to the 24-hour markings along the edge to approximate world time. It's a bit tricky to see where your city is, but the prime meridian or GMT line is marked so you can count up or down from there. Lastly, it's worth noting the moon phase is accurate to 1058 years, and that whole thing is made of gold. So that must be all, right? Ha, there's more. Back to that power reserve window. As you might have noticed, the number in there was 14, a pretty unexpected number for a power reserve. And yes, it does mean that the watch has a 14-day reserve, which is insane. Not as insane as long as 31-day reserve, but it's a different watch for a different day. This matters because you kind of need to keep perpetual calendars running for the best effect and to avoid concerns around setting them, which is where they get fiddly. As this watch is manually wound, having that extra power reserve is very useful, but also for times when one, can't wind their watch for a prolonged period. But with 14 days of power in a spring comes a lot of torque, which can't just be released into a movement. The answer? Yep, a constant force remontoir. Sitting between the twin mainspring barrel and the escapement is a 10-second remontoir, which you can think of like an intermediary mainspring with a small reserve. It gets filled and released every 10 seconds, creating consistent or constant torque across the whole power reserve range for consistent amplitude and accurate timekeeping. So yeah, the Lange & Söhne Richard Lange Perpetual Calendar Terra Luna isn't just a perpetual calendar regulator with a highly unique moon phase, it's a 14-day constant force perpetual calendar regulator with a highly unique moon phase. And that's f***ing rad. And of course, it's a Lange. So that movement is made of German silver, has 787 parts, is twice assembled, finished to the nines, and utterly gorgeous. Coming in at 45.5 millimeters in diameter and 16.5 millimeters thick, the Richard Lange Perpetual is a big watch and must weigh a ton with its either white or rose gold case, but hey, you can't just fit a 14-day mainspring in any old watch. As for the price, well, it's only available upon request, but when they launched it in 2014, they were around $230,000. So more than that. And that's all, folks. 5 watches I'd get if I had off money. I don't though, and I'm perfectly content with the watches I can afford. To be honest, this was clearly just an excuse to get to talk about 5 really cool watches that, price point aside, are very worth being aware of. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. It helps us out, and I'll see you next time.